Please welcome my friend Harley Finkelstein, president of Shopify and what I like to call Canada's Chief Entrepreneurship Officer, Michael Katchen, CEO and founder of Wealthsimple, Canada's favorite and biggest not a bank, and Aidan Gomez, AI in the North, CEO and co-founder of Cohere. Welcome.
These are our people. How you guys doing? I like when they clap before we even said anything.
I'm going to start by clearing up something that's been on my mind, is bothering me for 8 months, and I have a microphone so I can do whatever I want right now. About 8 months ago, about 8 kilometers from here, I was on stage with Chris Hadfield, Flex. And Chris asked me what I thought the issue was with Canadian tech or startups or entrepreneurship. And I said that, in my view, there was this sort of 600-pound beaver in the room, which was that Canadian tech entrepreneurs, or entrepreneurs in general, need more ambition. And the next day, literally every newspaper ran a story saying that Harley Finkelstein thinks Canadians are not ambitious, which was the opposite of what I was saying. What I was trying to say, and now that I have a microphone and more time, I can say it properly, is that I think all of us need to be more ambitious. We are ambitious. But if you actually look at the numbers, so if you look at something like the S&P 500, 500 of the most relevant and the most important companies on the planet, the average age of an S&P 500 company historically was 36 years. In the last 5 years or so, it's dropped down to 21 years. That's the average age. And when you study these companies that were on the S&P 500 that have dropped off, what you realize is that they did not drop off, they did not die because of competition. They died because of stasis. They died because they lost their energy. They lost the spark that made them ambitious in the first place. And what I want for all of us to do, what I hope all of us leave with today, is a little bit more of that energy, a little more of that ambition. And I've had the great honor and the great privilege of being friends with these two people next to me, Mike and Aidan, for quite some time. And I've watched both Cohere and Wealthsimple build these incredibly ambitious companies. And it is an honor for me to sit with them today for the next 30 or so minutes and talk to them about ambition and how they've built what I believe are some of the most important companies on the planet. So let me start with this. Mike, you're sitting closest to me, so I'll start with you. You've obviously built something that is not only big and important, but you're going after an industry that has historically been fraught with barrier to entry and restrictions and regulation. How do you think about ambition as you build Wealthsimple? And how do you think about ambition about Wealthsimple going forward?
Well, first of all, thank you. And thank you, everybody, for being here. It's really amazingly exciting to be around this Canadian energy about what we can build. One of our core values at Wealthsimple is naive ambition. And for us, where it comes from is this belief that when you throw out a new idea, like, hey, let's start a financial services company, the instant reaction from most people is to list the thousands of reasons it's never going to work. And you can imagine when I tried to start Wealthsimple, I had never worked in financial services before. I was 25 years old at the time. I had no business doing this. And people said the Canadian banks have an absolute monopoly on trust. It will never work. And so instead of listing all those reasons why it won't work, we flip the question. We say, well, what will we have to believe for this to work out? And that's what naive ambition is all about. And I often talk about how I agree, Canada is ambitious, but we need more naive ambition of, we got to believe we can build the best companies in the world right from here.
Aidan, I want to kind of shift a little bit to you and to talk about Cohere, because Cohere, obviously, you guys are at the epicenter of interests on a global scale right now. You're meeting with some of the most important entrepreneurs on the planet, some of the most important scientists, some of the most important regulators on the planet. And you decided to build Cohere from Canada. Although, frankly, you moved here from the UK. I mean, you went to school in the UK, you went to Oxford, and you moved here to build it here. I think for a lot of people in the crowd that are going through this thought process of whether or not I can build what I want to build here, or do I have to move elsewhere, Can you talk a bit about your thought and your thinking around why Toronto was the place that you felt you can build one of the most important companies ever?
Yeah, well, I think the problem of ambition isn't really a real one. I think that Canadians are exceptionally ambitious, and particularly in our education system, we just keep pumping out the world's best talent in computer science and physics and everything. The problem is much more people draining, right? Brain drain down to the Bay or somewhere else. That's really the issue. I've seen a lot of my peers at U of T and elsewhere. It's kind of that valley or bust mentality, which breaks the ecosystem and really hurts Canada. And so when I was thinking about starting Cohere, I started it with Nick and Ivan. We were all born here. This is our home. This is the place that raised us. This country's taxpayers paid for my education, my healthcare. And so there was no other place. I had a deep nationalism, a loyalty to this country, to building here, and to giving, like you say, a globally ambitious company to our country. It's not enough to build a company for Canada. You want to build a company for the world in Canada. And so that was really the motivation. It's our home. It has exceptional talent. And I think strategically, Canada's brand has been a huge asset to Cohere, particularly right now with a lot of the geopolitical shifts that we're seeing on the global stage. The Canadian brand has never been stronger. The Canadian identity hasn't been as strong in a very, very long time. And so now is really the time to start Canadian companies for the world, not just for Canada.
It does feel a little bit like, I think this event, and frankly, this entire week is a testament to something that is sort of changing right now, which is that we used to be apologetic. I'm building this big thing, but I'm building it from Canada. And I think one of the major shifts that's happened is now there's a pride to it. Like, I get to build this thing from wherever I want. Some of you know this, but about 2 years ago, Toby and I both left Ottawa, the place where we had been building Shopify for about 2 decades. And I was born in Montreal, but I grew up in South Florida. So going back to the US was a real option for me and Lindsay and our daughters. And as we began to think about where we want to live our lives and where we want to continue to build our company, I wanted to stay in Canada. We ended up moving to Montreal. And as you know, you guys got Toby. Lucky you. But I went to Montreal and Toby came there. And as we began to tell people that we were leaving Ottawa, the immediate assumption was, of course, you're going to go to the US. Of course, you're going to go somewhere else. And I got to say, the greatest decision I think I ever made was staying here and building it. I do wonder, though, Mike, you talked a little bit about this idea of like naivete and naive ambition. I wonder, is that something that is is it easier to do that as a founder and less easy to do that as, a professional manager? Because obviously a professional manager has a set of metrics they're given by the board. They don't necessarily have the same context. They may not even have the same ambition. Do you think there's a difference between founder-led companies and professional managed in that way?
Yes, of course. I think the founders have a privileged position when it comes to setting the tone and the grandness of an ambition, but I think it can come from everywhere. And that, for us, that is why it is so important we have codified it as a value, because it's an expectation of every single person at the company that they are going to push the ambition of the business. I can't be in every meeting, and I don't want to be in every meeting. In fact, I want to rely on my favorite moments at the company today are when we have these smashing successes that I only find out about later. We had this incredible event.
You had no idea it was happening.
Exactly. And this doesn't exactly fall in that camp, but just because we're here, we had one of those in this very room 2 weeks ago. We had a big event. We called it the End of Banking. 100,000 people from across Canada tuned in. I got to take all the credit because I was the lead speaker, but I had absolutely nothing to do with the event. And I think that tells me that you've created a culture where people think big things are possible. And to me, that's really important.
Aidan, you talked a bit about this idea of brain drain. And show of hands in the room, how many of you have left Canada and have come back to Canada? That is a meaningful amount of people. Can you talk a bit about what you've seen that has worked well for you to starve that off inside of Cohere? How do you remedy that? How do you think about avoiding that?
I think just making Toronto the best ecosystem and place to do your life's work is really essential to it. And so building a community, doing stuff like this. So huge thanks to the organizers of this event. When we lost Collision, it felt like a huge hit to the city. But doing something like this to bring the community together, to inspire them, and also to network and build a sense of community. Because oftentimes it kind of feels like you're building on a remote, desolate island here. You don't know that there are others in the community around you going through the same problems with a bigger network than you that can help you. And so by bringing the community together, I think teaming up to take on the world, that's really the asset. And that's what keeps people here. Obviously, Cohere is global. Like we have offices in the States, in the UK, in Asia. But what we've seen is a deep desire to come and build Canada. We've had reverse brain drain, where folks from the States or from elsewhere want to come to Toronto to build this company. And in part, that's because of Canada's brand, like I was saying before. We're viewed as a truly good country, good set of morals, good set of values. People want Canada to win. They're on our side. So I think it's that notion of community and making this place the best place to do your life's work.
I think one of the things also that comes up a lot when you think about brand Canada, you think about building here, is I sort of feel this on a daily basis, but in this room right now, there are hundreds or maybe even thousands of stories of incredible entrepreneurs and founders that are doing amazing things. This idea of being somewhat apologetic about our success, in case you haven't noticed, is not something that I suffer from at all. And I say that, somewhat, I'm sort of, that's half a joke. I've always sort of felt like the reason I love my job so much is I get to be the storyteller for the greatest story in the world, which in my view is that of Shopify. And obviously it's your companies for you. Aidan, let's kind of bring, we've talked a bit about the niceties on stage here, but let's bring a little bit of the green room discussion on stage here, because I actually think a lot of these events, the real talks happen in the green room. And one of the things I think that we talk about in the green room today, but generally, is this idea that, are we bad at telling stories about our own companies? Are we bad at telling stories about our country? Because I agree with you, as you begin to meet more founders, more entrepreneurs, as you begin to get more into the ecosystem, it is astonishing in terms of what we are building here. You meet all these entrepreneurs. We have this thing called Builder Sundays at Shopify. I don't know if any of you have been there, but we open up both the Toronto office and the Montreal office every Sunday. Anyone can walk in. And I'll randomly show up if I'm in one of Montreal or Toronto, and I'll just randomly walk around and meet people that are building. Some of them are building apps on Shopify. Some of them are building totally random stuff that have nothing to do with commerce or Shopify. And I'm constantly blown away. And I'd ask them, what you're doing is really cool. Are you talking about that? And they're like, no, we're sort of heads down building. In the case of Wealthsimple, in the case of Cohere, it seems like you guys are building, but you're leaving breadcrumbs so other people can watch your building, can follow your stories. So let's open the kimono a little bit to what we've been talking about backstage, which is like, how do we become better storytellers? How have you become such a great storyteller for Cohere?
Well, first off, I don't know that I am. I think that,
you are. Stop with the apologetic stuff.
It's a classic Canadian.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Dude, cut the bullshit. Canadian. You're a great storyteller and a great entrepreneur.
No, you're right.
And we all got your fucking back. Right?
Appreciate that. Thank you. Okay.
I mean, it is true. I mean, you're clapping to that, but like the people that want Cohere to win, first of all, is you. The other people that want Cohere to win is all of us, because if Cohere wins, all of us get better. The next round of Coheres get easier. If Shopify becomes a bigger company, everyone grows with it. Same with Wealthsimple. But talk about storytelling.
Yeah, no, I think that community aspect, like Shopify was who we pointed to say, no, we can start up in Toronto and we can win. We said it is possible. There's N of one. There's one that's broken through. There's one tech company in the past quarter century of Canada's tech project. But you guys broke through and you gave us that N of one. Before it was impossible. And you showed that it was possible. And that's what we need. We need that domino to fall and to create so many more Shopifys, so many more Wealthsimples, successful Canadian scale-ups, companies. So that's really part of the issue. I've forgotten your question. Telling the story.
You being a great storyteller.
Yeah, telling the story. So I think part of storytelling comes from the people around you, the folks that you're interacting with, being tied into some sort of zeitgeist. And there is an emerging Toronto zeitgeist. I know we're going to have Vin here, who has really...
Internet Vin is just
if you don't know
phenomenon.
You should know him. Yeah. But what he's done with what the folks at 535 have done, building that community and creating these places where you can find each other. That's where stories spark from. You come up with ideas, you challenge each other, you find angles to present things in a way that's just, it's salient to the world. It resonates with people. When I was starting up for Cohere, I didn't feel like I had them. They weren't really present. And we tried to create some of those spaces and we tried to invest in that. But it seems in the past, I don't know, since COVID, they've just started to blossom. Like these Toronto memes, like Vin launched the Brampton model. That blew up. Like everyone saw that, went completely viral. I think there's these ideas and memes, and there's this Toronto culture. We are fantastic storytellers. We're fantastic branders. We're able to craft something that the world wants to see. We just need to invest in it and spend the time doing it and do much more of it. Yeah, I think it's really about the more shots on goal you take, the more chances you get.
My view on storytelling is I think community matters and is incredibly helpful. But however great a community is, it's never going to build the business for you. And really what it comes down to is you got to work on things that matter. And if you work on things that matter, that have a purpose, it becomes really easy to tell a story around it. I think about why we're talking about Canada right now. I often talk about how the reason I moved back to Canada was I was deeply worried about the trajectory of this country. We do two things here. We pull things out of the ground and we finance pulling things out of the ground. And if that's the story we tell my kids in 20 years, I think all of the wonderful things that we had, the education that got paid for, the healthcare that got paid for, the things we take for granted are going away. And so we have a desperate need to build Canada and to really reshape our economy. And the only way to do that is through entrepreneurship. And I think so if people have purpose and build things that matter, it becomes very easy to tell the story.
I love that. I mean, yeah. I mean, on that sort of, you came back because you didn't want Canada to be a just resource industry or economy. I'm going to, another quick poll in the crowd. How many of you in the room, either yourselves or your parents, were immigrants to Canada? Okay, so a huge chunk. My dad came here in the 50s from Hungary in the revolution. The reason that we came here, the reason our parents came here, if you go a couple generations back, every one of you is going to put your hand up, is because there was this opportunity in this country. There was this beautiful, shiny light that you can actually build something from nothing here. And, we sit around on stage here talking about how we're super ambitious of building these great companies and we're entrepreneurial because we want to solve big problems. But remember also that for many of our parents and grandparents, and maybe for ourselves, entrepreneurship didn't start because of some passion. It started because they had no choice. It started because they couldn't get a job working at a company. And so selling eggs at a farmer's market was the only way that my grandparents were able to put food on the table. And so the benefit that we all have right now is there is this momentum. And that, I think, is what these events are all about, is creating this momentum. I do want to ask, though, Mike, for you, as you kind of think about your lasting impression on this, I mean, how much is Wealthsimple for you a business and a company that you deeply care about? And how much of it is like the mission for you is so important, breaking down this false facade of infrastructure been told we have to do from a banking perspective? Like, how do you kind of marry personal mission and professional mission with Wealthsimple?
For me, it's pretty easy. I mean, I think money matters. The way we talk about it.
Can you say that again?
Money matters.
Yeah.
And I mean that because we talk about how financial freedom, and this isn't my line, I'm stealing this from the former dean of Harvard, talks about how financial freedom is the greatest form of dignity that you can offer another human being. Because when you think about it, all that really is, it's giving someone choice. The choice to live the life they want, to provide the life they want for their family. And the way the financial services industry has been operating for decades has not been about empowering financial freedom. It's, too many fees that get in the way of people actually achieving a better outcome for themselves and their families. Moving money, making choices is way too complicated. It's meant to be overwhelming and disempowering. And so what work we're doing to try to give everybody access to the best tools to build wealth we think really matters. And so I think, just going back to your previous comments around community and being entrepreneurs in this room, I think everybody should also take away one other message from today is no one's going to go do it for you. There's problems that matter all over the place. And we in Canada have one other problem in addition to a little bit, we need to be more ambitious, is we like to talk about issues. So I'm breaking a rule of my own. I have a rule that I don't like to speak on panels to talk about this issue because I found I kept getting invited to speak on panels every week about how Canada needs to be more ambitious, and decided 2 years ago, instead of talking about the issue, I would try and do something else about it. So started a startup studio called Simple Ventures. Harley, thank you for being a part of that as well. And our goal is to launch 3 new great Canadian companies every year. And it was just another attempt to say, let's stop talking about this issue and what more can you do for the ecosystem and just get out there and build.
I love that. I mean, there is a bit of I think we all kind of feel it. Like there's a bit of a moment in time right now. We're all kind of done talking about the problems. We're done lamenting. It does feel collectively as Canadian entrepreneurs, all of us have just kind of decided to just stop with the complaining and let's fucking build. And I think that moment, I don't know what it was. I mean, obviously politicians have changed. Certainly we're out of the COVID kind of wave. It's the summer right now. Weather in Toronto is always like this. But something has definitely changed in the atmosphere. And we all kind of feel it that we're done with the complaining. It's time to just go get it. And part of the reason I think that it's important for, look, I take the responsibility of Shopify in Canada very seriously. I like hearing this, we need more Shopify line. But what I hear when someone says, how do we create more Shopifys? What I really hear is, how can I help others create their own versions of a large, globally important company? I also don't think we have the quantity of people that other countries do. What we do have is we have each other's backs in a way that I don't think any other country has. I mean, the green room was effectively a love fest back there. Everyone walks in, it just hugs and how can I help back there? That is uniquely us. And so this sort of next phase of building and helping and supporting each other, I think is a wonderful one. I don't really have a question about that, but I don't know. What do you want to say about that?
I have this story. So when I was part of the team that created the Transformer, I was an intern at Google. I was down in Mountain View in their headquarters. And I remember walking in on the first day, and I was I had just got started 3rd year of undergrad at U of T.
How old are you at this stage?
I was 19 or 20, something like that. I couldn't drink down in the US. I knew that. I didn't have a fake ID. But what happened was literally on my first day, I walked into Google. They have these things called micro kitchens, MKs, little kitchens where people congregate, talk to each other. First day I walk past the MK and I hear French, Quebecois French. And I turn and it's Sammy Bengio and Guillaume talking to each other. And then I sit down at my desk and there's another Canadian next to me. And I realized, holy shit, the best AI lab doing the most cutting edge research on the face of the planet is run by Canadians. It's amazing. It's a bunch of Canadians, we built this. And so it really hit me in that moment. Canada contributes so much to the world, and we sort of give it freely. We just hand it to the world. And it's time that Canada got something back for that. It's time that we actually benefited from the incredible people that we produce and the culture that we've created that just consistently leads to the best people in their fields. We can't just give it away for free anymore. We need to create Canadian institutions that deliver that to the world.
How do you think we do that? What is the most effective way to do that?
We start building. Right now, I actually got an email last week from a founder that I had invested in here in Toronto. And he said, hey, Aidan, a few questions for you. One of them was about his product. The next one was, oh, by the way, so I got accepted into this, I won't name the VC fund, but they're big tier 1 Silicon Valley VC program for incubation. They want me to flip my company to a Delaware corp. How did you do that? Which lawyers did you use? And I was just like, don't do it. Refuse. Don't do it. You're here to build a Canadian company. We need this. Do not flip to a Delaware corp. Keep the Canadian head corp. They'll be happy with a sub, et cetera, et cetera. But that is the sort of pressures that Canadians need to start saying no to. You need to start saying no. And in the venture community and the gross equity community, you need to provide the capital and the resources, the community, the incubation programs. I actually think we have a lot of those, and they're quite good. So the place where we need to invest is, I think, on the growth side rather than the venture side. But we need to provide those resources, that capital, to Canadians here. Otherwise, I got to see and intervene in that opportunity because luckily that founder reached out to me. But this happens passively constantly. All of our little bright lights that start, these ambitious Canadians who want to build a global company inside of Canada, they get pulled. And so we need to take an active, nationalistic stance to build for Canada.
So if there are people in this room right now that are getting pressured as we speak to do something like that, can they call Aidan?
Just call me. Okay. Call me.
I'm actually serious about that because one of the things I do think it's important is, some of you in the room have heard this story. I literally told the story 1,000 times, but the pressure that we got during our Series A, this is 2010 Shopify, that the Series A would be conditional on a move to the Valley. And we refused.
Yeah.
And someone else came, we refused that as well. And eventually we found an incredible investor group who didn't care where the hell we were based. What they cared about was what we were building and how ambitious was our vision. And was the team right? Was the product going the right direction? And the reason I tell this story is because I want to remind everyone that there are still going to be people that are still going to want to pull you down. And you can say no.
You can say no.
Yeah, you feel like you're going to say something. So give it to us.
I think that's totally right on. In our case, no one wanted to invest when we started the company because nobody believed we could do something.
It's a whole different
financial services.
Yeah.
So we did something like a little atypical. We went to a great Canadian, existing institution in Power Corp, and they provided our initial funding, which is maybe a story about there's many different paths to building a big.
How'd you know to do that? Well, we all sort of know the traditional angel, VC, Series A, BC, M&A, or IPO kind of path. How'd you know even to call up? And I know, your investors are incredible people. I mean, the Desmarais and what they've built in Canada, they are iconic. We should be celebrating and following their footsteps. So how'd you even know to do that?
I wouldn't say that there was a master plan. I'd say it was literally no one wanted to invest. And so it became about how do you hustle your way into doing what is required to build the company. And so we were lucky that, when we first started the business, one thing we did to the point of community, which is a little atypical as well, is I'd never worked in the industry. I knew trust would be really important to we asked people for their life savings. You can imagine what the conversation was like on day one. I'd go and tell people we're going to make investing simple, low cost. It's going to be great. Their question was, oh, Mike, that sounds awesome. How many clients do you have? Well, if you sign up, we'll have one. Like no one wants to be the first client of a wealth management company, right? And so we thought that if we could get these kind of industry titans to invest, we would be able to coast off a little bit of their reputation and credibility. And so we went to folks that had built businesses and been successful in financial services rather than in tech, who are very excited about backing the future of the industry. And it was, that fed on itself. One of those made the introduction to the Desmarais, which ultimately led to us pulling that round together. How has that path been for you? Has it been the right path for Wealthsimple? Totally. For us, it meant that we could focus on building the business. They effectively became our exclusive capital provider for a number of years, and we were able to scale the business and just focus on execution. And we've since, diversified, where we now have some of the best investors from all over the world who similarly have invested in Canada. I think until you guys did it, we were the largest round, only to be passed by Cohere in Canadian history, which is excellent. To your point of who's going to be the next one? Someone in this room, I really hope. And it's, for many of those funds, it was their first time ever investing in Canada. They've since made several investments. And I think that now, to your point of building on those that came before you, it's much easier than it was 10 years ago. Doesn't mean it's easy, but it's much easier in some ways than it was 10 years ago.
I mean, let me ask this. Although I think the most exciting industry in the whole wide world is retail and commerce, And you probably think it's financial services and wealth management. Let's just say the thing, AI right now, like you are the prettiest girl at the dance. And I mean, you are so pretty. It's shocking, actually. I mean that sincerely. You're very pretty.
Wow.
But you are the prettiest girl at the dance right now. And Mike mentioned this idea of building here. You mentioned the two letters HQ. I think a lot about why it's important to have HQ companies here, not branch offices. I love having great companies internationally invest here, but nothing gives me more great excitement and joy than seeing a great Canadian HQ. I study Alain Bouchard from Couche-Tard. I study Gila Liberté. I study the Demrays and the Bronfmans at Seagram's and Danny Reese at Canada Goose and all these, those are the people those are the proverbial posters on my wall. I love the fact that most of you don't even know who Alain Bouchard is, but the guy owns literally every convenience store in America. He owns Circle K. This Quebec French-Canadian entrepreneur owns all the convenience stores in America. So I love these stories of, I wish he was louder about it, but I love these stories of that. Because you are so pretty, Aidan, you're getting all these people coming to you and saying, okay, it's time to get acquired. It's time to become part of this bigger thing. And I know exactly how these M&A teams talk and how they pitch. And it's all about, you can do exactly what you're doing at your company, but on a much bigger scale at our company. And you will have life-changing amounts of capital flow in. Your family will not have to work for generations if you don't want. The pitches are fairly compelling. The way that we resisted was we didn't return phone calls to M&A, to corp dev departments at Shopify in the early days. We just didn't call them back. We knew that would start a cycle of conversation that would lead to a potential term sheet from some company for a lot of money saying, we want to buy Shopify. And so the way we avoided it was we didn't return those phone calls. But we were not getting the type of offers you must be getting. How do you avoid that?
We're just not open for it. We're not for sale. There's a full belief in all three co-founders that we're not done building. Any sort of exit that would take us out of Canada is only if we fail. And we haven't failed. We're still growing super quickly. So I think acquisition is failure. It's ending this process of building. And who knows, maybe Cohere fails, maybe we succeed, but I'm certainly building to succeed. And so I don't have time while I'm building for this reality to consider the other one. So like you, we just ignore it, let it go by, lots of missed calls. But every time we do it, we're grateful. There was early on a moment where we got a acquisition from a very large US company. An offer came in and we spent some time and we invested in it. And eventually we said no. And I'm so grateful. Looking at that number and where Cohere is today, it's just...
Were you close?
We were very close. It was a board level, what do we do? Do we take this seriously?
And what was the thing?
Or ChatGPT, the number of people talking to language models in the world was 56 or something. So it was people, yeah. So there was nobody was caring about language models. There was no market for what we were building. No one had bought a language model. No one was using a language model. So it was a very non-obvious moment. And so we considered this crazy, 9-figure offer. But I am so, so grateful we didn't take it.
Yeah, we are all grateful too for you to walk away from a 9-figure sucking offer and continue to build here. I mean, that deserves a round of applause, no? It's that's it. That's the secret to it. This is amazing. You're also a very good storyteller. I don't buy your bullshit. So I want to ask, we got to wrap up pretty soon. So I want to ask you each one last question, maybe as sort of your closing remarks. You're sitting in front of, actually, let me say this. Should I say it? Yeah, I'm going to say it. Okay. There has never been a $1 trillion market cap company created in Canadian history. Not one, ever. Some companies got big and no longer around, but there's never been a $1 trillion or more market cap company or valued company in Canada in the history of our country. I believe that someone in this room right now, maybe on the stage, maybe in the crowd, will be the person to do that. I absolutely believe that someone in this room is going to create a $1 trillion company over the next decade or maybe two. I love the sign in the back. No comment on that. And just to say the thing, whoever does that, you have not just our full support, you have the entire support of the entire country. We are behind you. We will support you. If you need to know how to think about multi-voting shares, or you want to think about cross listings on US and Canada, or you want to think about assembling the greatest IR team, call me. I will help you do anything you need to do to get to that point. So my hope is that someone in this room does that. What is your hope, Aidan? I'll start with you and end with you, Mike, for Canada, for entrepreneurs, for this room over the next decade.
My hope is that Canadians commit to the country and decide to build here. I think it's never been more important to be a Canadian entrepreneur. This moment in time, I really feel that our country is under threat. I feel that the box of Canada's sovereignty has been opened and it can't be closed. That question has been presented. Should Canada exist? It's been opened and it needs an answer. If we don't strengthen our economy, if we don't build a diverse supply chain, if we don't build a diverse set of companies that don't rely on just natural resources or just finance or just whatever, we will not be here in half a century. It is existential. And so we need to build for our country, and that takes a deep commitment and deep ambition. It won't be enough to just serve the Canadian market. You're going to have to build for the world. Now, the flip side is, because of this situation that we're in, the opportunity is huge. Everyone trusts Canada. Everyone wants to support Canada. Everyone wants to buy Canadian across the world. I just came from Rome. We have offices in the Middle East and Asia. Everyone I speak to loves Canada. They want to buy your product. Give them a reason. Go build it. Go scale across the world. That is the only way we'll keep our country safe. So there's one team, and it's Team Canada. And we really need to fight for this, fight for our home.
Love that. Hell yes. Mike, take us home.
I mean, I'm not sure I have much to add, but maybe I'll add a spin on it. When I started the company 10 years ago, I would go around in forums like this talking about how Canada needed to be more ambitious, and I would quote one of my favorite books at the time, Why Mexicans Don't Drink Molson by Andrew Mandel Campbell. And it was a sad commentary on Canadian business. It goes through 5 industries, and it talks about how Canada has all of the ingredients to build world champion companies, and yet has failed to figure out the recipe. And the headline of the book is, why is it that Mexico, a country with very little fresh water and barley, produces 20 times more beer than Canada, which is a world leader in both of those? So if I had any wish, it's my kids who are very young today will never read that book, because we will toss it out and it will be irrelevant because of the people in this room will have gone on to build world-leading companies, and Canada will have assumed its rightful place in the global economy. And I think, wouldn't that be an incredible thing for us to hope for?
So, Mike, Aidan, thank you for being leaders. Thank you for being champions. Thank you for inspiring all of us, me included, in your own journeys. To all of you, just before we wrap up, let me just say that if you are an entrepreneur in the room and you are building something and you want to do something big, ambitious, and you're doing it from Canada, just know that you have all of us behind you. You have Mike, you have Aidan, you certainly have me and the entire community behind you to help you build and scale. And all we ask is that you do things and you tell a lot of people. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you.